I wanted to lay out a number of things in the short time I have with you this evening. And I wanted to start with a thought. What if many of the things that we are focusing on in Britain and the wider West at the moment are a distraction? What if they are a distraction because our politicians cannot answer the bigger questions that lie in front of us all? Let me, in no particular order, list some of the challenges that the UK faces at the moment. We have a rising cost of living. We have inflation at above 10%, becoming a norm. We have a country where young people who can't accrue capital are nevertheless expected automatically to become capitalists. We have migration, maybe 2 to 3 times what it was under the new Labour years, as a norm. We have a housing crisis where targets for house building are never met, but in any case it wouldn't matter because the arrival of new migrants into the country effectively takes up all of the housing stock you could aspire to make in a year. We have unfunded public sector pensions liabilities of around £2 trillion. An NHS whose budget can never be stopped from rising, whoever is in power. We're facing an era where automation is already taking away many blue-collar jobs, and AI is already taking away many white-collar jobs. The question also exists of how we get anything done at all in an era of social media, where, for instance, a thoughtful speech might be given by a politician making policy announcements, and the headlines become something to do with a heckler, an example plucked from thin air. But what do we do when the heckler's veto exists? What do we do when, as T.S. Eliot once said, we are distracted from distraction by distraction? And then what do we do about the additional bollards thrown in the way of our society by the radical left? Bollards like the gender nonsense and the racialization of absolutely everything. Now, it seems to me that the left can't solve any of these things at all, but it does have answers. And the left's answers come, of course, with the left's perpetual advantages. That includes the advantage that the left has, which is that their answers are the same everywhere and always. It doesn't matter which country you're in, it's always the same set of answers that are put out by the left. The demand, for instance, for equality, the demand, indeed, for equity, the demand for social justice, as though everyone agrees on exactly what that is and it is achievable in this life and any other. The left has extraordinarily little to say, actually, about all of the problems I listed above, but it has very strong weapons. For instance, and they have envy, one of the deepest human emotions that exists. Envy. What a thing to have in your armory. They have resentment. Again, one of the most powerful tools you could have. Nietzsche says in The Genealogy of Morals that the person of resentment has only one way to be hauled out of their life, and that is for somebody, even Nietzsche doesn't know who, he says maybe a secular priest. Somebody must stand over the life of the person of resentment and say, you are correct. Somebody has ruined your life in the world entire. The person is you. But nobody exists that we know of in our society who would dare to say that thing that even Nietzsche could only imagine being said. So they have resentment as well as envy. Then they have a third advantage: struggle. Constant, endless struggle, where the meaning of life is answered. We have the struggle for equity, equality, social justice. And if you don't agree with me, I will keep chanting the same banalities endlessly, as though repetition might persuade you. Now, what can we answer these questions with? What can we on the right answer these questions with? I would say that there are three things in particular. The first is love. Perhaps the only answer that exists in particular to envy. Love of country, love of family, love of the people around you, love of the culture that has produced you, of the tradition and the inheritance you've been born into. The second thing we should be able to say that speaks at a similar depth is the importance of gratitude. When Nietzsche wrote about the man of resentment, he said that apart from that telling off that has to be given to him by somebody in his life at some point standing over him, the only other answer to the person of resentment situation was gratitude. Gratitude not just for the things that you've been given, but also some kind of peace with some of the things that you haven't been given, a recognition that you cannot have everything in this life. And thirdly, I would say, one of the deep answers to the problems that the left so inadequately tries to answer is aspiration. I don't want to name the minister in question, but some years ago, and some people here may have been at the same dinner, I was at a dinner with a British minister, and it was an off-record thing. At this off-record occasion, the minister was being interviewed by somebody who was very, very well informed and did something slightly cruel, which I wouldn't have done myself, but he pointed to a young waiter on the side of the room and he said, "Young man, how old are you?" The young man said, 25. The man said, "Do you own a house?" He said, "No." He said, "Do you think you'll ever own a house?" He said, "No." He said to the minister, "What do you say to that young man?" This, I hope, is not seen by anyone who knows the person I'm talking about as too deep a personal attack. But the minister in question ended up waffling for quite a long time and ended up talking about brownfield sites. Now, if the left is working with envy and resentment and struggle, you better have more than brownfield sites. And the only thing that I know of that can take out resentment at that level is aspiration, is the opportunity to build a country in which young people actually believe that if they work hard, they will get something better than they could have expected, that they will be rewarded for their labor, that they will not live a worse life than their parents, but if they work hard, will be suitably rewarded and will have a better life than their parents. Aspiration is the only answer to the life of resentment offered by the left.